For over a decade after the Second World War, Great Britain was a nation defined by gray edges. Austerity was the law of the land. Rationing lingered like a long winter, and the automotive industry was building sensible, upright machines meant for utility, not desire. But as the calendar turned to 1960, something shifted. A generational dam broke. London became the undisputed capital of global cool. The youth culture didn't just want utility anymore. They demanded expression, freedom, and speed. And at the absolute center of this cultural earthquake was British automotive design. In the span of just a few years, a small island nation facing economic hardship did something impossible. They built a car that changed how everyday people moved, a car that forced Enzo Ferrari to admit defeat in aesthetics, and a grand tourer that defined the global standard for cinematic sophistication. This is the story of the 1960s British motoring explosion. 3 distinct icons, one unforgettable decade, and the engineering genius that changed the world forever. To understand the flash of brilliance that defined the 1960s, we actually have to step back into the dark winter of 1956. The Suez Crisis had hit the UK hard. Oil supplies dropped overnight, petrol rationing returned, and the British market was suddenly flooded with strange, cramped German bubble cars. The head of the British Motor Corporation, Leonard Lord, despised these foreign microcars. He viewed them as an insult to British engineering. In a fit of frustration, he issued a mandate to his top engineer, a brilliant and notoriously stubborn man named Alec Issigonis. The mandate was simple: build a proper, tiny, ultra-fuel-efficient car that could carry 4 adults and their luggage, and do it quickly. Issigonis looked at the traditional automobile layout and realized it was inherently wasteful. In the late 1950s, cars were pushed along by a longitudinal engine in the front, sending power down a massive metal drive shaft through the cabin to the rear wheels. This swallowed up valuable interior space. So, Issigonis threw out the rulebook. He performed an engineering miracle that would permanently change modern car design. He turned the engine sideways. By mounting the 4-cylinder engine transversely, he pushed it to the absolute front of the bay. He then bolted the gearbox directly underneath the engine block, sharing the same oil reservoir. To maximize interior space even further, he pushed the 4 tiny, 10-inch wheels out to the absolute outer corners of the chassis. The result was staggering. 80% of the Mini's total footprint was dedicated entirely to the passengers and their luggage. It was an optical illusion on wheels, microscopic on the outside, surprisingly spacious on the inside. When the Mini launched in 1959 and rolled into the 60s, it completely demolished class barriers. In Britain, your car had always signaled your social status. But the Mini was different. It was cheap enough for a working-class art student, yet so stylish and clever that rock stars, royalty, and fashion designers bought them by the thousands. It became the ultimate classless vehicle. But the story takes a wild turn when a legendary race car builder named John Cooper entered the picture. Cooper took one look at the Mini's wide track, its low center of gravity, and its unique rubber cone suspension, and realized something Issigonis hadn't intended. This economy box handled exactly like a professional go-kart. Cooper tuned the engine, added front disc brakes, and birthed the Mini Cooper S. Throughout the 1960s, the tiny British underdog didn't just compete in the racing world, it dominated. It systematically humiliated massive, roaring V8 American Fords and high-powered European sports cars at the grueling Monte Carlo Rally, winning outright in 1964, 1965, and 1967. The Mini proved that brute force was no match for pure, lightweight agility. While the Mini was busy democratizing the city streets, a completely different revolution was brewing in Coventry. On March 15, 1961, at the Geneva Motor Show, Jaguar pulled the silk sheet off a car that would instantly paralyze the automotive world. The Jaguar E-Type. Even today, looking at a Series 1 E-Type is a visceral experience. But in 1961, it looked like a spaceship that had landed in a Victorian courtyard. Its proportions were intoxicating: an impossibly long, sweeping hood that made up nearly half the car's length, a tightly tucked cabin, and an aggressive, muscular rear stance. Legend has it that when Enzo Ferrari first laid eyes on the E-Type in Geneva, he stared at it in silence before admitting to reporters that it was, without question, the most beautiful car ever made. What made the E-Type truly revolutionary, however, was that its beauty wasn't just skin-deep. It was born directly from the racetrack. Jaguar's visionary aerodynamicist, Malcolm Sayer, didn't design the car by eye or by artistic intuition. He was a mathematician who used complex aerodynamic formulas developed during his time in the aviation industry to carve the metal. The E-Type's body was a masterclass in reducing drag, heavily based on the multi-Le Mans winning Jaguar D-Type race car. Beneath that gorgeous, forward-flipping hood sat a mechanical masterpiece, a 3.8-liter, twin overhead cam, straight-six engine pumping out 265 horsepower. It utilized a Monaco cockpit tub structure paired with a sophisticated independent rear suspension system, a setup that left its contemporary competitors looking technologically prehistoric. The performance figures were jaw-dropping for the era. The E-Type could rocket from 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 7 seconds and hit a top speed of 150 miles per hour. But Jaguar's real masterstroke was the price tag. In 1961, an E-Type cost roughly £2,000 in the UK, or about $5,600 in the United States. To put that in perspective, it offered equivalent, or superior, performance to an exotic Italian Ferrari or Aston Martin, but at less than half the cost. It was a weapon of mass disruption. Rock legends like Jimi Hendrix, cinematic icons like Steve McQueen, and everyday enthusiasts all wanted a piece of the magic. The E-Type solidified the idea that high performance and breathtaking art didn't have to be walled off behind billionaire gatekeepers. If the Mini represented the rebellious heart of the 1960s, and the Jaguar represented its untamed beauty, there was one final machine that captured the decade's ultimate sense of sophisticated luxury. Enter the Aston Martin DB5. Launched in 1963, the DB5 was never intended to be a mass-market car like the Mini, nor a value-packed disruptor like the Jaguar. It was built explicitly for the elite. Handcrafted at the Newport Pagnell factory, the DB5 utilized a specialized construction technique licensed from Italy called superleggera, or super lightweight. Thin aluminum panels were meticulously hand-beaten over a delicate, rigid steel tube framework. Under the hood sat a magnificent 4.0-liter all-aluminum straight-six engine, producing 282 horsepower and mated to a precise German GH'F 5-speed transmission. It was the quintessential Grand Tourer, a car designed to cross continents at 140 miles per hour in absolute comfort and silence. Yet, despite its incredible engineering, the DB5's transition from a magnificent luxury car into an immortal cultural deity happened entirely by chance. In late 1963, a film production crew was looking for a sophisticated, high-performance vehicle for their upcoming cinematic adaptation of Ian Fleming's spy novel, Goldfinger. They approached Aston Martin, who were initially reluctant to lend them a prototype. After some negotiation, a silver birch DB5 was delivered to the effects department. The rest is history. Equipped with an ejector seat, machine guns, oil slicks, and revolving license plates, the DB5 became an extension of James Bond's own personality. When Goldfinger hit theaters in 1964, it triggered a global phenomenon. The DB5 wasn't just a prop, it was a character. It encapsulated the ultimate 1960s dream, Cold War intrigue, effortless British style, and cutting-edge technology wrapped in a tailored suit. Overnight, production couldn't keep up with demand. The DB5 became, and remains to this day, the most famous and recognizable cinematic car in human history. As the 1960s drew to a close, the winds changed for the British automotive industry. The 1970s brought labor strikes, industrial consolidation, shifting safety regulations, and economic stagnation that cooled the fires of this creative explosion. The golden hour had passed. But what a golden hour it was. The 1960s was a brief, beautiful moment where economic necessity, engineering genius, and an unrepeatable cultural renaissance aligned perfectly. The cars produced in this era weren't just transport containers built to move people from point A to point B. They were rolling sculptures, physical manifestations of confidence, and mechanical triumphs that proved a small country could dictate global style and performance. Decades have passed, technologies have evolved, and the world has completely transformed. Yet, The silhouette of a Mini darting through traffic, the roar of an E-Type straight six, and the silver birch reflection of a DB5 still hold the exact same power today as they did over 60 years ago. They didn't just define a decade. They became immortal.